Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to another episode of Nuance. Today, I'm going to try something new. I am driving from Michigan all the way to Tennessee for a video project I'm working on with my other channel. And I'm going to be driving a lot, like all across North America. I'll spend a lot of time driving. I do a lot of listening to videos when I drive. So I'll have my phone that'll be doing me navigational aids, but also be playing videos. I often like to punish myself because, you gotta do some of that sometimes. Anyways, I listen to some of my favorite YouTube channels. They make me aggravated. I thought, well, why don't I listen to them and talk to you guys at the same time? The video we're going to listen to today is The Trade War is Heating Up. China Industry Takes a Massive Hit. And then the thumbnail for this lovely video is China is Screwed. And it's got my favorite Winston and Matt on it. And this channel, just so we all get it straight, is called China Fact Chasers. So these guys are chasing the facts. Let's see how they do. Maybe I won't have anything nuanced to say about it, but I think I will. Let's drive. I'm at a rest stop now, and I just took a little nap because I just came back from Europe, and I'm a little jet lagged, even though I've been back for a little bit over 24 hours. We've got another, let's see here, we've got another 6.5 hours of driving till I arrive at the destination. But that's okay. We can drive ourselves a little mad.
We all know that this current trade tariff debacle is still going on.
Yeah.
And of course, we're not seeing an end to it because there's a situation where you got basically two hard-headed sides that just don't want to back down. A spokesperson actually today said, no, there has been no calls between Xi and Trump. That's a lie.
Right.
They went out and said it.
Donald Trump has basically said that he's made deals already. People are knocking down his door to make deals with him. And I don't deny that some have. But in this situation, China has been holding back. In this situation, America has been the aggressor. So to try to say that China is just being stubborn here is not being very factual. It's really kind of in America's court to kind of deal with the mess that they've created. If you punch somebody in the face and they don't immediately come to you and apologize and ask for favors, are you supposed to kind of say it's equal on both sides? I don't really think so. All right, let's keep going.
Went out and said it.
Honestly, they like to lie a lot.
Yeah,
China lies. It's their favorite thing.
Yeah.
China likes to lie a lot. Well, America, especially this administration, really likes to lie. We're talking about the guy in the administration that used to use Sharpies on maps to claim it was a true weather map.
Not only Florida, but Georgia could have was going toward the Gulf. That was what was originally projected.
Or that pulled up just recently a picture of a fist with MS-13 written on it, post-processing on Photoshop, and went on the news and then yelled at the journalist asking him about the fist and said, you are a liar. You're telling lies because you don't believe the lie that I'm telling you.
But you're not being very nice. He had MS-13 tattooed.
We'll agree to disagree. I want to move on to something else.
Terry, he had MS as clear as you can be, not interpreted. This is why people no longer believe the news. Do you want me to show you the picture?
I mean, if we're in such crazy territory right now that even if you were to say that China did some of the things America's doing with regards to lying, you would say that's too much. That's too much. China wouldn't do that. That would be a bridge too far. But whatever. They're both liars, you say.
The whole world's suffering because of it. China specifically, though, is suffering a lot harder.
If this was some sort of sick sport, China is losing by leaps and bounds here.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry.
Okay. Nat goes ahead and says, if this is some kind of sick sport, then China is losing big time. I I think that, to be honest, that's the kind of sport these guys like, first of all. If they're in a sport where China is losing big time, not the Chinese, but China, they would be all about it. They would love it. They would love it. But they're trying to make it sound like China is going to be the big loser in a relationship broken between America and China. I really, really doubt that. We know what happens when we go to the store and we buy products. They're almost all made in China. When those products stop coming from China, as the next week will show, next couple of weeks will start showing, these ships are just starting to arrive, America's going to start feeling the hurt. And what these guys are trying to do is trying to soften the blow, trying to make you feel like they're going to hurt more than you, gives you an opportunity to feel comfortable with yourself, but they're not being true to you.
Balance here.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry to say this, but, you know,
They're not sorry to say that.
here living in America, so far, almost no change.
Okay, so in America, so far, there's no change. That's not true. I was literally out buying some plastic parts to fix my sprinkler system before I left on the road trip, and they increased the price, an exaggeratedly crazy inflated price. They increased by $11 on a $45 item, and then they told me it was because of the tariffs. And that product had dust on it. That product they had bought pre-tariff, and they charged me an extra tariff fee on it. And so Americans are actually starting to get screwed by themselves, American companies and corporations, even now. So, no, people are really starting to feel it. And I've already talked to many people who are having difficulties and troubles that do business here in the States. But let's hear what else they have to say.
Yes, you're not going to be able to buy your cheap Temu thing or your Amazon
And
cheap thing.
Good.
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
Let the hate flow through you.
Okay, this is beautiful because Matt, who, you know, bro, dude, you're doing my name dirty. Why do you have to be called Matt? Because you are just the snarkiest of dirtbags. So Winston says, you know, we're not going to be able to buy, you know, you're just not going to be able to buy that Temu shit or that Amazon crap anymore. And then Nat goes, good. Listen, moron. A lot more is made out of China than Temu and Amazon's cheap stuff. You guys constantly talk in many of your videos about how China just makes the most god-awful cheap garbage. If people just bought American, then the world would be a better place, and how they've stopped buying American. I would love to see what kind of American stuff that they bought, and I would imagine that in many of those American-made products, there was Chinese materials, there were Chinese components, there was Chinese assembly along the way. They probably use iPhones, which until we find out that, you know, India is going to make a better iPhone than China has been making over the last decade and a half, maybe more, because I don't think they will, and they'll probably go back to China because that's what they're going to have to do. Most of what the world uses today comes out of China. It's a fact. And even if, you know, you buy something from Vietnam or Cambodia, a lot of those factories are being fed with products and assembly processes that help to produce their products from China. The idea that China makes garbage and shit is true. Oh, you didn't expect that one. It's true. Have I turned? Have I become what I am watching? No. The truth is, they make what we buy. If we're going to buy some shitty toys, they'll make some shitty toys. If we're looking for some little plastic shitty items, they will make some shitty plastic items for you. If you're looking for a nice electric car, they'll make that too. How about an iPhone? They'll make that. How about an LCD screen? They'll make that. They make all sorts of stuff. the good stuff and the lower quality stuff. It all depends on what we want to buy. They're not shoving it down our throat. Plenty of people enjoy buying from Temu because they want to buy cheaper stuff. Just the argument that China just makes shitty stuff and we should be ready. Like, just let's move on. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, it's going to be uncomfortable and a hard time for everyone around the entire world. Not going to joke, but it's far worse for the people of China.
So right now he's saying it's going to be tough for the people all over the world, but it's really going to be tough for the Chinese. And that's what we really need to embrace. It's going to be hard on them, harder than it is on us. We're doing good. We did good. When in essence, this whole trade war was a self-inflicted wound by the Americans, by the American administration, and let's just to be true, by one American in particular, Donald Trump. His personal decision to wage this trade war because he's always felt tariffs are the key, and because he's built a community of sycophants around him that can't tell him how dumb it is, and if they do, they get fired, has created this situation. It would be very interesting to see what their state and what they would be saying if the complete roles were reversed, and if it was China who enacted a trade war like this, like a blanket trade war that's right off the cuff, just an instant shattering of trade. Like, what if they were just like, you know what, we're not going to sell to anybody else in the whole world, or if you do want to buy from us, we're going to raise the price. Now they have tariffs that come out of China. China stuff has tariffs and all of that. Like, so I understand that. But what if they unilaterally raised fees on everything? They would be saying China is the aggressor here, and China is bad, and America can't capitulate to China. The Chinese Communist Party, they went ahead and they did this. America won't stand for it, and they're not going to negotiate because that's bullshit. This is completely imbalanced, and this is how they do things, they'd say. This is how they do things. They are evil. They are evil from the head to the toe. But because America did it, they're like, everybody's going to hurt, but, China's going to hurt a little bit more, and China's being unreasonable here.
Yes, and specifically the manufacturing industry. So looking at some of these, Chinese factories slow production and send workers home for U.S. tariffs as U.S. tariffs bite. These factories are suffering. We actually have some specifics.
It's so funny, like they're saying, look at these poor factory workers. Look at these poor factory workers losing their jobs, all because the Chinese government won't give in to America's threats. These poor Chinese people who, in most of my videos, I described in the worst terms. They're ugly, they're dirty, they're smelly, their food sucks, it's covered in gutter oil, they don't have any hobbies, they're even the richest people are like, I would rather be a poor person in America than a rich person in China. I'd rather be a poor person in America than a middle-class person in China. But you know what? Those poor guys.
You can be double the wealthy in China, but have less of a life quality than a person in the States. And it's simply got to do with the living environment that you're in. That the super rich can have like really expensive cognac. You still end up living in the exact same environment as they do. So I would be on the same level as, say, a billionaire.
My middle class lifestyle in the US is better than a rich person's lifestyle in mainland China.
The lower class people here in California enjoy a better quality of life than the rich people.
Yeah, they have fresh air.
Yeah.
Those poor factory workers, they're losing their jobs. Why? Why are they doing that? Well, it's because America threatened the whole world with tariffs and focused it on China. After buying from China for decades and decades, completely okay with it, and the profits that were made from American companies that were selling their products in the States and making tons of money, but just because they feel threatened now by current China's rise, they decide this huge kneecap thing with tariffs. And then they're like, let me tell you how poor these Chinese factories in China, they're hurting. These poor Chinese factories. As if they're not hurting directly from the American authoritarian empire. I mean, like, honestly, if you're really talking about this decision here, this guy made a unilateral decision on behalf of himself because he thinks tariffs are the greatest. He sold it, told everybody lies. Prices are going to go down. We're going to move manufacturing back to the States. It's all going to happen. It's all perfect. We're going to have the best economy ever. And then the things tank because he's doing something crazy. And they're looking at China saying, oh, China.
A couple of these. Workers at Dehong Electrical Products in Dongguan, in Guangdong, gave workers 1 month leave on minimum wage. Instead, the factory was under significant near-term pressure as clients suspend orders.
Okay, I could have told you this, and I did tell you this 3 weeks ago or a month ago when Trump made these crazy things. I was actually in China talking to friends who had factories, and they said, unfortunately, because of this decision by Donald Trump, we're going to have to make some changes. We're stopping our orders that go to America until the prices stabilize or these tariffs finalize. We are going to have to scale back our production. A couple of my friends had factories being built. They had to stop it. People were going to lose their jobs. It's very true. This video is basically like copium. It's like China's getting hit harder than we are, and that should make you feel good about yourself. When in reality, the pain is about to come. The pain has already come. They're scrubbing the internet for videos. These guys, as much as I hate scroll them personally, because I'm trying to find talking points that I can add nuance to defend China in reasonable ways, and even to criticize China in reasonable ways, they comb through Chinese social media in order to find any crumbs that they can use to hate, degrade, and misconstrue the reality of China for any reason. And this reason, it's about tariffs. I can go online on TikTok and find people who have lost their jobs, who have, maybe they can't pay their bills. They're $400 away from bankruptcy. They are hurting. But anyways, that's their job, and, good for them.
Yeah. We have plastic molding factories that are going under. We have endoscopy kit places, right?
Yeah.
That make things for the U.S. market that said they could use the rest of April to find new jobs and provided them access to a headhunting agency.
Wow.
I love how when Matt reads off this thing, like they need access to a headhunting agency. These factories lost their jobs because our American president just made a stupid unilateral decision that tanked the stock market, ruined a lot of people's 401k portfolio, caused people to panic, sell off their U.S. bonds, and basically buy gold, and made the American dollar a whole lot weaker, and made people's confidence with the U.S. government so much weaker. It's like, but these Chinese people are losing their jobs. And these plastic injection mold factories that make products that Americans used to really enjoy and buy, and now are frustrated that they can't buy, or can't buy as cheaply, these guys are losing their jobs. It's hilarious.
We have a Yangguan Technology in Dongguan. They had to cancel all their weekend work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that factory had to cancel all their weekend work. What a shame. So they're still working a full week, but they lost their weekend work. I think I've probably seen another episode where they're like, the Chinese workers are overworked and they force people to work on the weekends. They work 7 days a week. How dare they? Now, because it's advantageous to criticize, they're like, they let them have the weekends off. Bastards. I mean, obviously, if you're working the weekends, they want to work the weekends. They're trying to make some extra money. But it's just, I am 100% sure I've heard that guy say the exact same argument when it was happening the other way.
The toy factory he worked at, sold mostly to the U.S., is forcing management to give workers 2 weeks off. What do you think that means?
Yeah, they're not getting back.
He's like, you know what that means? They're never going to go back to work. Well, whose fault is that? What is the Chinese government supposed to do in this situation? They're the largest superpower in the world next to America right now. You can argue who's at the top. They're pretty friggin' close. Are they just going to let somebody come and smack them in the face and take it? I'm telling you, if the roles were reversed, these guys would be on soapboxes screaming that America shouldn't capitulate to China. You can't let a bully win, they'd say. You can't even move an inch. In fact, you should double the tariff on them. They would be standing up, singing the praises, saying, you know what, you might lose your job. I'm sorry, but this is more important than that. We've got to hurt China. We've got to hurt China with this move, and we can't let them win. But if China's on that side saying, hey, you punched me in the face, I'm going to ride this one out. I'm going to make you realize that you can't do this to everybody. They're like, oh, no, this is beyond the pale.
Chinese electronic supply chains. We have all kinds of factories in this article that are under serious pressure right now as they can't fulfill orders. And remember, guys, China's not set up to combat this. You can read all the articles you want, and I've been seeing so many op-eds right now.
Yeah. You've seen so many articles from economists and historians and like reporters that like have spent their lives studying China, and oh my God, they've all said stuff that they don't agree with. Listen, I taught English in China, guys. I taught English in China. Don't you understand? God, some of these guys, they just don't understand. Teaching somebody how to say, my name is Huang. That's the key to understanding the true China, my friends. Winston will boast many times that he trained doctors to say, I am Huang, to say, this is a mop. And therefore, he knows the truth behind the Chinese economy, my friends. Do not believe your lying ears.
Yeah. Coming out of big publications, and they're saying like China's holding all the cards, China's got this all figured out. I can tell you just from video evidence.
I can tell you from going to China. No. Don't go to China anymore. I don't go to China anymore. Why? Because I'm afraid to go to China because I talk shit about them so much that the government probably won't let me back. So where do I find out my information? From videos.
People that work at factories.
I can also tell you that I was looking at a lot of the op-eds, and most of them are written by Chinese people.
A lot of them.
So,
oh, that's my favorite. It's my favorite. These guys are so funny because, okay, this is a great line because they always talk about how they love Chinese people. They hate the Chinese government. But, you know, Chinese people are good. Chinese people are good. It's just they're a horrible regime. But these op-eds, and I guarantee these op-eds they're reading are Chinese people probably living outside of China, right? But in their eyes, it doesn't matter. They're all spies and commies and all of this stuff. Don't believe your lying ears when they say they love Chinese people, but they hate the Chinese government. This is a perfect example because what they're saying to you is, you know, even these stories that are coming out that are written that are talking about the nuanced perspective of how China is dealing with the West and taking into consideration the Chinese culture and how the Chinese culture reflects their position on how they're going to defend themselves against this sort of trade war, and how most Chinese are pretty thrifty, even the rural ones. Very poor Chinese have their money invested properly. They're not in debt like we are in America, credit card debt and all this stuff. I mean, no. Don't listen to, say, a Chinese person trying to get you to understand the Chinese perspective. You got to listen to a Westerner who thinks America is great right off the bat. I would imagine even some of these Chinese people writing these op-eds still probably live in America, like America. But no. You know, one of the strange things I found out is the people who have like a nuanced perspective of how China is dealing with the situation with regards to America. They're Chinese, and that's a problem because you don't want a Chinese person trying to teach you how to understand how China is going to deal with this situation. You need a Westerner, from a Western point of view, telling you that they're not going to deal with it as good as we are. That's how it's going to work, my friends. Holy shit. Don't trust Chinese, is what he's saying. Don't trust them with their opinions. Don't trust them with their experiences. Don't trust them and their lives. Don't trust what they say. They are liars. All of them. They're liars. Chinese fact chasers are called.
I mean, you take that as you will.
Yeah, I mean, look into it, I guess. But
take that as you will. Look into it, I guess. Please look into it, because if you listen to these two morons, they're only going to take you completely down into the shitter. All they're doing, honestly, is they're mystifying you, and they're going to make you feel like China is going to break at any moment now, and you're going to be really surprised when, those shipments stop arriving, and in the next few weeks, we're going to get hit pretty hard with this stuff. And you're going to be like, wait, Winston and Matt told me that Chinese are going to be hurting a lot harder. They're going to bend, and they're going to bow to this thing, But don't listen to any Chinese people.
Oh, I mean, you take that as you will.
Yeah, I mean, look into it, I guess. But you have these factories that run the Chinese economy.
Yes.
These don't run the American economy. Factories don't run the American economy. America's a rich, developed country that uses primarily a services industry, right?
That's a great one, too. Factories don't run the American economy. We're service-based. He's like, we don't give a shit. We don't make anything. We do stuff. We don't make anything. We don't make nothing. Well, doesn't that mean you guys are going to hurt here in America way worse than China is? First of all, China makes products for more than just America. China makes products all around the world. I know, like, plenty of Chinese factory owners, they don't even do any business to America. All of their business is South America. A couple of people do business with Russia. Some people do business with Africa. Some people do business only in Southeast Asia. I mean, China is in almost the best circumstance to weather this sort of a storm. And you're saying that the reason America is not going to hurt through this process is because, we don't have a manufacturing economy. We'll be fine. Then who's going to make the shit you want to buy? You just told everybody the exact thing that you should have, but in a different tone. You should have been, listen, guys, China makes all our stuff. America doesn't make anything. We're going to have a really tough ride through this. All that stuff that you use, it's made by China because America is a service economy. He's right. He's right. But he's delivering the information in such a way that makes China look like the big loser in this. China has all the factories. China is going to stop selling us their goods. America is a service economy who likes to buy things. We're soon not going to get those things that we like to buy. Who's going to be the ones that's going to hurt the most? Countries that are going to make products for the whole world, or the country that needs to buy the stuff that country makes products for?
America's a rich, developed country that uses primarily a services industry, right? Mm-hmm. And other things, higher level economic factors. China is a manufacturing economy that needs to make cheap stuff.
China needs to make cheap stuff. I'm telling you, I lived in China for 20 years, okay? And he's absolutely true. All they make are Tinker toys, Lego bricks, and toothpicks. That's all that they make. And those squeaky toys, that like a rubber duck squeakies, that's it. Just those 4 things. So, I mean, he is totally right. Without the American economy buying those rubber duckies, we'll be better off. We don't need rubber duckies. We don't need toothpicks. We don't need all that stuff. I just let the food sit in my teeth. You know what I like? I like the midnight snack. You know what a midnight snack is? Like when you're sleeping and you wake up and you lick and all of a sudden a piece of food comes out and you're like, oh, I needed that. I needed that. America is going to be helped by the lack of toothpicks because that's all that they make is cheap stuff. Who needs all that cheap stuff?
And when you cut the cheap stuff off from its biggest customer, what do you think happens?
It's funny. When you cut the cheap stuff off from its biggest customer, what's going to happen? Well, first of all, China supplies, all of China's industry supplies outwards to America, like 13%. It's only like 13 to, it's not nothing, but they have like 80% of their industry is dedicated to supply products for the rest of the world. But just the fact that he admits that, Americans only buy cheap shit from China, it's just so ludicrous.
There's no like massive calculations you need to make in your head. It's very simple to understand. This is going to devastate China.
I'm willing to bet that Matt hasn't ever done a massive calculation in his head, ever, in his life. He doesn't spark me as a massive calculation kind of guy. I don't see him with a monocle and doing scientists. I don't know, what does a mathematician look like? I'm picturing some sort of who's that guy? I'm picturing some sort of like a guy with a cardigan and chalk on his face and an chalk eraser in his pocket, doing these massive calculations along the back. I can't do massive calculations, but I can guarantee you that Matt Lawai 69 ain't doing that either.
People seem to really not understand, or they look at China from a Western lens.
Yeah.
Because
people just always tend to look at China from a Western lens, and what they really should do is look at China from an Eastern lens. Listen to, like, say, Chinese scholars or Chinese journalists or Chinese people that write op-eds and stories about how China is going to be impacted versus the West. Oh, that's a great idea. Wait. Didn't you just say?
I was looking at a lot of the op-eds, and most of them are written by Chinese people.
A lot of them.
So, I mean, you take that as you will.
Yeah, I mean, look into it, I guess.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe listen to Chinese. I don't know. Maybe not.
You see a lot of, especially through the propaganda, you see a lot of sophistication. You see a lot of money in China. You think that it's the same. A lot of people actually, Americans have this, especially the people looking at Xiaohongshu, a little red note. When they look at this, they think that...
Oh, my God. I don't even have to stop yet because I'm going to wait for Winston to keep talking. But the smug level, there should be a smug meter. And Matt's face right now is quintessential max smug.
They think that in China people are wealthier and people actually have a better standard of life and all this kind of thing. But that's just not true.
Okay. There's a lot of poor people in China. They're less poor than they were before, by leaps and bounds. The rural Chinese have seen a huge opportunity come into them by, huge infrastructure advantages, building of rural towns into cities, and those cities into metropolis. I've seen it. I've lived in China. I've been to the villages. I have also been to the subsequent massive cities housing millions. Kids have huge opportunity to get a better job than their parents. Are there economic hardships? For sure. But he is trying to make it sound like the glitz and glamour of China that we see on video from the voices of the people that have traveled there, me included, are complete fabrications and lies. Like it's a Hollywood set and all of that stuff is going to fall over and you're going to reveal some group of Chinese with the old style hats milling around leg deep in swampy rice fields.
But if you were a Chinese person living in America, right, and you posted I make a lot of money here in America, Red Note would remove your post at the behest of the Chinese government, and you had to say, no, you're poor in America.
I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true, actually. There's plenty of videos on Xiaohongshu now of talking about how nice it is to live in America. And there's plenty of videos from real people in America right now that are convinced that their lives are not as nice as the lives that they've seen in China too, And there's plenty of videos on Xiaohongshu of rural people living rural lives, and it's very obvious that their houses are sticks and grass and things like this. And there's plenty of, there's plenty of everything. I think they're being just facetious and douchey.
The point I'm trying to make here is that, so you think that these people are rich and sophisticated in China and they're out there buying stuff like you do in America, because America's all about consumption, and it's to a fault. People just buy crap all the time, and it's for some, I don't even understand. It's kind of like eating. It's
retail
like
therapy.
It's just like, oh, I didn't get a package today from Amazon, so that means I'm just not fulfilled.
Oh boy. This is a rare criticism of America that I kind of agree with. We are a consuming culture here in America. We like to buy lots of stuff. If you go into, say, a Walmart in America, you will see so many different types of simply cereal, just every type of cereal you've ever imagined. And you just won't necessarily see that in, semi-truck just, I don't know if you could see that, but the semi-truck just went into the ditch. I was wondering why we weren't moving as quickly as we were before. The semi was completely off. Anyways, where was I? I do think America buys too much frivolous stuff. That is one thing that you could learn from China. Chinese people tend to hold on to their money longer. They save. When they go out and buy a big ticket item, that typically they're spending cash, even if they're a little poorer. You know, that's why you go out, you see a lot of people, they have like an iPhone or whatever, and they get that iPhone, they pay for that iPhone. It's pretty incredible. We could certainly learn from that. But he has to say something negative a little bit so that he can probably crop up an argument that's going to cast dispersions on China. So let's see where it goes.
Oh, I didn't get a package today from Amazon, so that means I'm just not fulfilled. You know what I mean? People are buying. They're looking for excuses to replace things all the time. And that's American culture. Good or bad, take it, as you will. In China, that's not happening. So when the American market stops buying all the Amazon goodies and the Temu and the whatever cheap stuff from China, that stuff sits there. Then they think, okay, well, we could sell it to the domestic market in China. But the people in China aren't buying that stuff. They have no need for that stuff.
Yeah, that's so funny because they're saying that's a compliment to Chinese people, and he's twisted it into like a criticism. So his argument is Americans buy cheap garbage, which, again, China doesn't only make cheap garbage, but they do also make cheap garbage. And Americans like to buy cheap garbage, so they do that. But they're saying that, the problem is that these factories that make the cheap garbage aren't going to be able to sell it to these Chinese people because Chinese people don't want to buy that cheap garbage. Yeah, it's more of an insult to Americans buying cheap garbage than anything. But I will also say that Chinese buy plenty of cheap garbage. Chinese kids love little plastic toys. Chinese love these like little items. They maybe won't spend the amount of money that Americans might spend on it, and that might be a bit difficult. But China has a huge secondary market where they can sell stuff that's been already manufactured. I gotta imagine that there's tons of stuff that's going to be offloaded on the Chinese market that people are going to end up buying. They'll be discounted. The factories are going to try and sell it at cost right away, but then they're going to have to take it down a little bit and sell it like on liquidation. Just the way it's going to be. And again, this is because of Donald Trump, not because China has not capitulated to America's threat.
They've already got it, and they're very frugal, and they don't want to just keep buying stuff. And they don't.
They're very frugal. And you just don't want to buy anything because they're frugal. And that's why they're going to hurt more than Americans, because Americans spend, and are always in debt. That's why Americans are going to do better through this. What are they saying? They're stupid.
And if you've met Chinese people, you'll know they're very good at saving. They're incredibly frugal.
Okay, there he goes. I'm doing this word by word, but I should be waiting longer because he's actually saying that Chinese are really good at saving. They save money, which is why they're going to weather this a lot better than America will, especially as the impacts of this tariff war start really presenting themselves physically to the American people by lacking of items. Once all of these companies and distributors and wholesale start actually running out of inventory and are going to have to start marking things up based on what they're buying from China and what China is willing to sell to them in the first place.
They'll always find a way to get the biggest discount. They won't buy anything unless they're getting a good deal, that type of thing. So you don't have this like wanton spending culture that you do.
Yeah, it's funny. He's like, they're really good at saving. They're very frugal. Then he has to twist it and say, so they're always trying to get the best deal. They're always trying to, it is honest, but he says it in such a way that it's like, they're always trying to screw you. You know what I mean?
That you do in America. So America's easy to sell to. China's very difficult to sell to. And so these factories cannot get rid of their stock.
No.
Because no one's going to buy it in China,
No.
It's funny that he always talks about how poor and how, ignorant, because they don't know what's going on in the outside world. They're rural poor, they're whatever. But then they're so poor that they wouldn't even be willing to buy the American shit. It's It's kind of an insult more to Americans than even an analyze it than a nuanced perspective of Chinese purchase culture.
Was mentioned, I believe this is Dehong, but this is a whole factory district in Dongguan, just so you get an idea what one looks like.
So then he pulls up a street view of, street view, okay? Just for all of you guys that don't think you can see what China's really like, you could literally go in. You could see some poor areas, some very dirty areas, and you can look on the street view. This one is a factory in Dongguan, looks very clean.
Interesting story. I drove into probably this exact area.
You did.
I wanted to find out where the YouTube play buttons were made.
Yeah.
Okay, so he brings up this video, which is actually, what would I say? CW, China Winston, not after China Winston, where he kind of made interesting videos. So he got the silver play button, and then he decided to find out where the factory was that made it. Always astounded when he brings up these older videos, because it's almost like you're bringing up a video from a different person. He was always a snarky, douchey guy, but he wasn't so evil, I guess, as he's become anyways.
So I drove all the way there, and I tried to gain entry, and I didn't, and I wrote a note to say, thanks for sending me my thing, but it was like a end of world looking kind of scenario.
Yes,
Okay, so this place made his silver play button. It's a very nice story, and he's going to go down there and he's going to say it was like an end of world thing. It was apocalyptic. It was disgusting. This is a bit of an addendum. I'm in the middle of editing this video together, and I just watched Winston's video where he went to the factory to get that play button. You guys should watch that video, because this version of Winston is so different from the Winston of today. He goes to the factory, tries to get in, but he can't get in. I found it so funny because he does not mention in that video that it's like an end of world dystopian landscape. He shows the factory workers and he talks about how they're going to lunch and all of this stuff. At the very end, he says, "Thank you to all the factory workers who make cool stuff." Thank you to all the factory workers that make cool stuff. Man, I would love to introduce that Winston to this Winston, because, man, they would have an argument. Matt would have an argument with that Winston too. Don't believe your eye and eye. It's so funny. Thank you to all the factory workers who make cool stuff. Anyways, back to the existing. My video is getting more and more and more. But anyways, now, I don't know. I live in downtown Detroit. I live near downtown Detroit. I've been to many factories. Factories don't always look pristine and clean and beautiful. China has some really nice factories, and there are also factory districts where people make a lot of stuff. Classic injection mold factories are, sometimes pretty rough places. They got a lot of people working on plastic injection mold machines. What do you think? It's going to be like a Ritz-Carlton?
It was, it's depressing because you stop there and you've got, obviously it was like end of work or lunchtime, and just like thousands of factory workers just come and walking out there, and they were just like all worn out and sad, bad and tatty, sad looking, and it was...
What an asshole. What an asshole. So, first of all, if you look at a lot of the faces in that clip that he uses to provide context, they're just walking. Expect them to, hey guys, how's it going? I just worked at a factory for 5 hours. It's lunchtime. Let's have a good time. You know what? I like my work so much, I'm going to turn around and go back. They just walked out of the factory and they just weren't happy. And they looked like they worked hard too, you know? You know, when you go to American factories, those workers, they won't even leave. They stay in the factory because they just love it so much. They have such a good time. They're inside, they're playing games, they're volleyball, you know, they're volleying from one machine to the other. They're fantastic. Even the grease, they paint their faces with the grease and they just like play cowboys and Indians, you know? And they're just having a good old time. It's a factory. They're factory workers. They're leaving the factory for lunch in the thousands because, again, you're just proving the point that China makes a lot of our stuff and they're going to lunch. And you're literally looking at factory workers going to lunch in China. And you know what? They're all wearing a nice blue outfit. They're not wearing chains on their ankles. They're obviously not locked in the factory. They're walking around. Once they get their lunch, they're going to go back to work. And you're looking at these people, these Chinese people, again, it's not the Chinese people that I don't like, it's the Chinese government. But these factory workers, they're just tired and they look, you know, so unhappy, you know, because they have a job. Because they have a job and they're going to lunch break in the middle of their job. You really expect them to come out of a factory job in America with a big shit-eating grin on their face? Like the hills are alive with the sound of fucking music? You're so gross. I mean, do you even look at the world through, you don't look at the world through the lens I do, that's for sure.
It was like, well, you know, this is where all your stuff comes from, and it's not very nice.
It's not. The reality is not something you want to see.
No.
The reality is not something you want to see. That's why you should watch the Chinese fact chasers, because they certainly won't give you the reality. You know, you don't want to see the reality. So watch us, the Chinese fact chasers. We'll make sure to keep that reality buried. All right, guys, like, subscribe, share, comment. Yeah, let me know if you really like this sort of episode. It sure helps to kill time while I'm driving. I could probably knock out a whole bunch of these. Problem is, I've got to edit them. which ain't going to be fun. Because I got to watch his stupid video all over again. In detail. But, you know, if you want to, I got like... buy me a coffee down below, WeChat. There's a few donation things. If you have an opportunity, please. I appreciate it. I'm going to be on the road driving, and I need some gas money. Just be driving like a lot. This thing chews up the gas. But yeah, let me know what you think. I feel like being able to cast some nuance specifically on these videos is really important. Thanks again. Talk to you later. Bye.